Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Pravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So where are we in our text?
Verse 22.
Which chapter?
17.
Chapter 17, verse 22.
There we go. Okay. Chitte Yadarshavadhyasma Shuddhe Vidya Prakashate Yamaur Nityeshcha Yagyeshcha Tapobhistasya Shodhanam. When the mind becomes purified like a mirror, knowledge is revealed in it. Care should, therefore, be taken to purify the mind by yama, niyama, sacrifices, and religious austerities.
So this is interesting. He's making a reference to the first two steps in the Raja Yoga tradition, the yamas and niyamas. One has to do with proper moral precepts in the world outside, and the second has to do with our internal ethical alignment. And you can look those up on yourself. We don't have to go into those in depth here, but there are processes like ahimsa, non-injury. Saucham literally means cleanliness, but it means living an ordered, pure, sattvic life. Satyam, which means truthfulness, but it also has a larger meaning of integrity. So they're wonderful things that you can look up yourself. But what's interesting is he's using the image of the mind as a mirror. Now you have to understand back in the 14th century, no wait, this is not v29, this is Shankara. Back in the 8th century or 9th century, mirrors were not silver glass as they are today. They were polished metal. So if your mirror was like left outside and stuff like that, the surface would get corroded. So what you needed to do was polish the mirror until it was a clear, completely flat, reflecting surface. If it had stuff on it, the reflection would not be clear. If it were curved or bent or ripply, then the reflection would not be accurate. So this is the idea. So what happens is, if the mind is impure, if the mind is still corroded, colored by vasana, by raga and dvesha, jiva bhavana, it's unclear what our essential nature is. So what he's pointing at is what we want to be able to achieve is this absolute purity of mind. Now, a pure mind doesn't mean good thoughts as opposed to bad thoughts, virtuous thoughts as opposed to vicious thoughts. A pure mind means fewer thoughts. So our endeavor is to reduce the frequency and the volume of the flow of thought. Now, I like to use the image of traffic outside my home here on Grand Avenue. So at this particular time of the day, what time is it now? It's 11 o'clock. So the sound of the traffic is relatively constant. At rush hour, oh boy, it's constant. The sounds go up and down, but there's no break in the sound of the traffic. Yet, the sound of the traffic is made up of a collection of individual cars, trucks, motorcycles, etc. So also, the mind is a flow of thought, of vrittis, made up of individual, discrete thoughts, feelings, memories, reactions, sense perceptions, etc. Now, if, on the other hand, I'm up meditating at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning, the sound of the traffic is very different. There's a lot of silence, and I can hear one car go by. And the sound of the car arises out of silence, occurs for a period, and then goes away. So also with the mind in meditation. Eventually, the frequency and the volume of thought subsides to a point where you can see a thought arise out of silence, it occurs, and then subsides. Now, we have some purushartha, effort in this. Once we begin to apprehend the fundamental unreality of all thoughts, thought arises, we just flick it, let it go. We don't wrestle with them anymore. So just like with the traffic, there will be a space of silence between the sounds of the cars going by. In time, you will see there's a space between your thoughts. Swamiji used to say, when the last thought is thoughted, before the next thought starts thoughting. In that space between the thoughts, the mind becomes like a clear mirror standing. Then, with the attentive faculty introverted, it's clear to me there is no personal sense of self. The personal sense of self, this ahankara, egoism, jiva bhavana, the thought or feeling that I'm a person, is dependent on the flow of the mind. It's not an entity. There's no Jim inside. There's no Mark inside. There's no Aditi inside. These are events, not entities. Now, we can understand this intellectually. We call indirect knowledge, paroksha jnana. But what Shankara is saying, in that moment of absolute silence, doesn't have to be for a long period. With the attention turned within, so we notice it. Nothing there. No thing there, yet it's me. It's pure awareness. Then when the thoughting returns, the mind is conditioned by that direct experience. We have the realization, the recognition, as the result of the aparoksha jnana, the direct experience. I have the pratya vijnana, the recognition, the recollection of it. And I go, oh, there's nothing there. Only Chidakash, the space of pure awareness. So simply do an exercise like listen to the traffic or the sounds outside. Who hears? Then we begin to penetrate into that very famous Zen koan, a bell ringing in an empty sky. Now, when the mind returns, perhaps that individual sense of self will return. But at a very deep level, we remember it's not really true. It's chit chaya, a shadow self, a reflected self. a transient self. It's not a real self. Now, since Shankara has used the image of the clear mirror, and of course, what's our tapas? What's our spiritual practice? It's the polishing of that mirror. That's all it is. The great Sufi saint Ibn Arabi uses this image. So this entire universe waves out of consciousness. It's not really created. It's nothing but consciousness appearing as name and form. So the seer of that clear mirror is Brahman. And in the end, that mirror of the mind is Brahman. So it's God knowing God knowing God. Wonderful, wonderful imagery. Any thoughts or questions about this?
Yes, Jim, I'll try to articulate it as well as I can. The we, through this practice and effort, realize what the eternal subject is Brahman, and that is only of use to those who of our lives who are able to see the relative unreality of the products of our mind. But everyone else, that is all beings, at the end of their lives, also not returned. That is, when the mind dies in any being, it returns to, or not returns to, but the eternal subject subsumes it, let's say. So the eternal subject applies to every being, regardless of how unaware of it is during a lifetime. As everyone, we emerge from this space of consciousness, this nothingness in terms of things, and we'll return to it regardless of how enriched we are by an awareness of it during our lifetimes. But it's the fate of every living being, right?
Well, yes and no. So eventually, through many lifetimes, after the body dissolves, then the subtle body dissolves. But for the vast majority of beings, the impressions gathered in a lifetime do not dissolve at death. So the subtle body survives the death of the physical body. And
But
then,
yeah, go ahead.
so we are not dissolved as a mind and subsumed into Brahman. There is still a form, it's a subtle form, that remains and remains in ignorance. So we can talk about a microcosmic effect of that. So at night, you and I go to sleep. Now we are dissolved into the bliss of Brahman, absolutely true. But what is the nature of deep sleep? Pure ignorance. It is not samadhi, it is ignorance, meaning I know nothing. And in the morning, the residual impressions of the past are still there. I wake up in the morning and the impressions of the past express themselves in a continuity of the past.
Well,
I don't wake up in the morning as an attorney.
well, isn't that a characteristic of the mind, of, let's say, the human mind? But unless the doctrine of reincarnation is taken on, and I don't usually in the text we've read there's no argument for reincarnation. It's all after the death of the body and the mind, we return to or are subsumed with Brahman.
No, you've got a fallacy there. Because
Okay.
if you deny the existence of reincarnation, you must deny the existence of incarnation itself. Nothing is born and nothing dies.
Well,
So who is it who's dying and going back to Brahman?
That's I don't know where we came from, but I don't think that I haven't
come anywhere, Mark.
What?
So you have to understand from what level you're talking, from the level of the absolute.
Yeah.
The birth of the body is an illusion.
Yeah.
The self is never born. But if you're talking about the world of name and form, I, Jim, was born in 1948. And I have a physical body and a subtle body. Now, I may be a knower of Brahman, but if I'm not a knower of Brahman, in the relative world, when the physical body dies, the subtle body goes to a loka, works out a little bit of karma, and then is impelled back into incarnation, just like you wake up in the morning and you're still Mark.
Well, that's never propounded or argued in the texts in the classical texts that we read, that notion of
Please go back and reread chapter 2 of the Gita.
Okay.
But it does not say that a person in ignorance who does know yoga is liberated at the end of their life. They had a beginning when they were born and an end when they die. That's not what Vedanta says.
Oh.
It either says nothing is ever born. It just appears.
Okay, I'll think about it further. Thank you.
But what you're saying is, you're born into this world, you're in the state of ignorance, and that's kind of real because you were born, and it's kind of real because you die, but then everything is unreal after that. So it depends, are you looking from the realm of the absolute, or are you looking from the realm of the relative world?
Well, from the realm of the absolute, when you die, everything is real.
Say again?
If you're speaking absolutely, whether everything, reality remains, it's eternal, unchangeless, and so forth, and whether or not you live or die, that's what is the absolute real reality.
That's correct.
Oh. Yeah.
And the man of knowledge or the woman of knowledge knows that.
Right.
And the person in ignorance, the self in them, is still unborn, unchanging, and undying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, okay. We'll talk some other time.
May I suggest go back and reread chapter 2.
All right.
You
I'll
can
do that.
start with verse 11 if you wish
All right. Okay.
of Gita.
Right. Okay, Jim, thanks.
But what I hear you saying is you're positing the reality of the physical world for a while. And that
It's unreal.
ignorant people, that then there's no reason to do yoga.
Of course,
If everybody's already liberated.
it's not a question of liberation, it's a question of knowledge and the enrichment of lives in living such that we don't think our personal lives are real or so important or so
And that's certainly the reason we strive hard for liberation, because it improves the quality of life in this world.
right. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean for your neighbor who has no interest in yoga that when they die, poof.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
Now, the bottom line is, what do we know for sure? We haven't had dead people come back and talk to us. And in the end, it doesn't matter. You do not need to believe in the doctrine of reincarnation to get value from yoga.
Right.
Very good questions. Any other ones? Next verse.
Shariradi tapa kuryat tadvishuddhastha dharmuttamam mana adi samadhanam tattadeha vishoshanam. The best austerities regarding the body, the mind, and speech should be practiced in order to purify the mind. The controlling of the mind and the emaciating of the body in different seasons should be undertaken.
I'm not sure I translated as emaciation. The point here is that there is a twofold process. We have a preparatory practice, which has as its goal purification of the mind. We sharpen the wonder sword of discrimination. Then it becomes the useful instrument for inquiry into the nature of the self. Another image is all of spiritual practice is like, say, removing the steam on the mirror in the bathroom. And when the steam is gone, the reflection of your face is very clear. You don't have to do another course of action. So all we need do is remove the impurities. It's all that need happen. And all the various spiritual practices are only for that reason. But just like my old classic image I used in the beginning meditation class of sharpening the knife before you cut the tomato. Sharpening the knife in and of itself does not lead to the goal. In the end, you take the sharp knife and you slice the tomato. You can't slice the tomato with a dull knife, it squishes. Likewise, all the practices of control of the senses, meditation, renunciation, discrimination, becoming adhikari, a fit student, doing your yamas and niyamas are of value. Never deny their value. But Shankara thunders, my problem is ignorance. Actions in and of themselves do not remove ignorance. Knowledge, direct knowledge, removes ignorance. Just like if I want to have knowledge of the poetry of Shakespeare, first I must learn to read. That's the preparatory exercise. Once I can read, I can open the book of Shakespeare poetry. First, someone needs to tell me, oh, these beautiful poems. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Did John Donne write that? Did William Blake write that? I don't know. I have to inquire. Who wrote that? Oh, Shakespeare wrote that. Then I can go from. Next verse.
Manasachondriyanam cha kyaukagrayam param tapaha tadjayaha sarvadharmabhyah sadharma para uchyate. The attainment of the one-pointedness of the mind and the senses is the best of austerities.
Yes.
It is superior to all religious duties and all other austerities.
So now he's cutting to the chase. What is the practice that is most efficacious? Is it taking sacred baths? Is it going on pilgrimages? Is it fasting for long hours? Is it chanting Lalita Sahasranam several times a day? These are okay, they're effective. Here Shankara says, attaining single pointedness of mind, capacity to focus the mind on a single object of meditation, letting extraneous thoughts this is the best tapas. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Drishtam jagaritam vidyat smritam swapnam tadevatu sushuptam tadabhavam cha swamatmanam param padam. Sensuous perceptions are to be regarded as the waking state.
Say it again, the what perceptions?
Sensuous perceptions, those related to the senses. Those very perceptions revealed in sleep as impressions constitute the dream state. The absence of perceptions and their impressions is known to be deep sleep. The witness of the three states, one's own self, should be regarded as the supreme goal to be realized.
So here he's riffing on Mandukya Upanishad, where the author of the Upanishad does the exegesis on Om. It says Om is divided into 4 quarters, Chatushpada. They are A, U, Ma. Wait a minute. There's more? And silence. Stands for the waking state, where I perceive the phenomenal exterior world. U stands for the dream state, the undigested impressions of the waking state lodged in the mind, which then combine in all sorts of phantasms at night. Deep sleep, where I know nothing. Now, we are not unconscious in deep sleep. It is like closing your eyes. Close your eyes for a moment. Are you blind? No, you can open your eyes now. You are seeing the back of your eyelids. But the back of your eyelids occlude all other perceptions. The Turiya, the 4th, is not another mind state. It's not like taking LSD or ayahuasca or something. Turiya is the 4th in the order of our discussion. And it means the awareness that witnesses the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. And in samadhi, when they're completely gone, it's still there. And when the mind returns, you witness the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. What is that? It's always there. Me. What is the nature of that? Slow down the mind, thin the mind, and look. Never known as an object, but always known and experienced as aham, the subject. Next one.
Sushuptyakyam tamo jnanam bijam sapna prabodhayoh swatma bodha pradagtham syad bijam dagtham yatha bhavam. What is called deep sleep, darkness, or ignorance is the seed of the waking and dream states. It gets perfectly burnt by the fire of self-knowledge, and it no more produces effects, like a burnt seed that does not germinate.
So, when you go to sleep at night, the seeds of egoism are still there in their seed form. Just like when you plant bulbs in the spring, you do not know what color the flowers are going to be. They're in their seed form. Everybody's experience of deep sleep is the same. I know nothing. I can't even think the thought I know nothing. I can only in the morning say, oh, I must have slept soundly. I can't remember a thing. But there's a continuity from yesterday to today. What is that? The vasanas are still there. And the vasanas constitute my spiritual ignorance. So with the annihilation of the vasanas, here and now. Spiritual ignorance ends. The nature of myself becomes crystal clear. Is it the self that has that realization? No. Self-evidence of the self is always there. Self is always knowing itself. It's always free. It's the mind that undergoes the change. Buddhi becomes Buddha, awake. That changes everything. Because it was only the mind that had the problem.
Is it only certain type of vasanas that have to drop away? Because if all vasanas dropped away, wouldn't we die? Like, wouldn't the body die? And it.
Great question.
So,
Did you all understand her question? If all activity under all circumstances has desire as its cause, which it does, when all vasanas are gone, don't you drop dead? And the scriptures say, no. The vasanas are not the same. And we have the two classic images of roasted seeds and a burnt length of rope. So if I get fresh mung beans from Whole Foods or Berkeley Bowl, I can sprout them. They're living. But if I take those same mung beans and I put them in a frying pan and I saute them, not with an oil, but just dry, they look exactly the same, but they will not sprout. Likewise, I can have a length of rope. The length of rope can be used to tie me up. It's the Folsom Street Fair. But if the rope is burned, there is ash on the ground that looks just like the length of rope. If I touch it with my foot, it crumbles. So also, remember a vasana has two powers, avarana shakti, vikshepa shakti cha, veiling power and projecting power. What is the nature of the veiling power? In my mind, I have the non-apprehension of myself. Essence of the projecting power is, I think I'm a person. I think the world is real. When the vasana is roasted, even though I'm wide awake, even though I'm seeing a world of name and form, even though thoughting is happening, I do not lose the apprehension of myself as Brahman. And I no longer think the phenomenal world is substantial. Now, to the outsider, they look at the equipment of the woman of knowledge, and they see her functioning in the world like anyone else. But inside. There's no doubt. So you tune up the mind right now. Just listen to the trumpeter out there. Notice who hears. Do you see any person in there? Do you?
No,
Did you die?
no.
Yet you know that Jiva Bhavana comes and it goes. It's not real. It's not permanent. Isn't that clear to you?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yesterday, who knows? Does that make you sense?
Yeah.
So at the end of v22, there's a whole section called Is There Prarabdha for the Saint, which directly deals with this issue. We talk about the three kinds of karmas: Sanchita karma, Agami karma, Prarabdha karma. Sanchita karma, the karmas of the past that have yet to fructify, meaning impressions that may have been laid down lifetimes ago. Let's say you have a Sanchita karma of wanting to be a 6'4" NFL football player. You also had the karma to be born as an Indian woman in Dallas. Guess which one was the stronger?
The second one.
Yeah. Why? Because that's what it is. So when knowledge dawns on the mind, it isn't going to be any better being an NFL football player. Let it go. Okay. Agami karmas of this life that we set up for the future. So you started to study Indian dance. If you have the thought, oh, if only I'd started dancing as a 6-year-old, I could have been a professional and danced all over the world. If only I had a body like so and so and such, it would have been so much better. That's what I really want to do. It's too bad that I'm too old. It's too late. I can't do it this life. Dawning of knowledge, it wouldn't be any better, just different, roasted. So all that we're left with is prarabdha, the karma of the now. Those karmas that were set in motion that brought you into this life. So, what is the mark of a woman of realization? She knows she's not the body. Only the body has prarabdha, not the self. Teaching of prarabdha is only given to explain to the ignorant. Why do I see the Mahatma walking around? Why aren't they dead? They must not be realized because they're walking around. Oh. And then riffing on what Mark was talking about earlier. Actually, this body is like a dream. It's nothing substantial. So does it really have prarabdha? On one level, we can say if I'm in the relative reality of the world of vyavahara, transactions. Yeah. You've got your allotted dose of gains and losses, successes and failures, joys and sorrows. From another viewpoint, it's just like a dream. You have a wonderful dream, or if you have a nightmare, which is more real. If we're talking about the relative world of transactions, is there cause and effect? Of course there is. Did you get in the car and drive to Oakland this morning?
Yes.
Yeah, cause and effect. You didn't fly, you didn't teleport, you got in the car and drove. Cause and effect. Is that real or unreal? Well, it just depends on from which viewpoint you're looking. From the relative reality of the world of transactions, cause and effect is real. From the absolute, came about like a dream, seem not fundamentally real. If you dream you go horseback riding, is putting the saddle on the horse and climbing on top of the horse cause and effect? Yes. In the dream. From the viewpoint of the waker, was it real? No. All depends which loka we're talking about. So in the end, Shankara says, actually, we can't say that there is prarabdha of any kind. Can we say the cause and effect of the dream is real? No. But in this waking state world, we use it. The other example I like to use is Newtonian physics. For 99% of our transactions in this world of name and form, Newtonian physics works just fine. If you're a quantum physicist or an astrophysicist, it's not valid. But I'm not particularly concerned about my quarks. I'm far more interested in whether my coffee got cold. Making sense? Was that useful?
Mm-hmm.
All right, next verse.
Tadevaikum tridha gyeyam maya bijam punah shramat maya vyatma vikaropi bahuteko jalarkavat. That one seed called Maya is evolved into the three states, which come one after another again and again. The self, the substratum of Maya, though only one and immutable, appears to be many, like the reflections of the sun in water.
Yes. So, because of consciousness's Maya Shakti, the world of name and form appears. So we have the macrocosmic imagination. Brahman, the locus of Maya is in Brahman. It is consciousness itself that manifests this world of name and form. Not as solid objects, but as imagination. We, to a tremendous degree, reenact the creative process of the infinite. Create our own little zoo. Oh, that's really going on. That Maya Shakti manifests as the three gunas. But you are v29, always beyond. Never touched by mind itself. Next one.
Bijam chaikam yatha bhinnam pranaswapnadi pistatha swapna jagrashcharireshu tadvachatma jalenduvat. Just as the one seed called Maya is regarded as different according to different states, such as the undifferentiated dream, etc., so the self appears to be different in waking and dream bodies, both individual and aggregate, like reflections of the moon in water.
So he's used these two images, last one, sun in the water, this one, moon in the water. And he's making reference to this classic image. So at evening, when it's cool, I always imagine Shankara on the portico of his Nambudri house in Kerala. There is a full moon and there are 6 jars of water. And if you peer into the water jars, you see 6 moons. Is that the moon in the jar? No, it's Chandra Chaya. It's a reflected moon. Caught in the water. If I do not look up and see the real moon, I think, what's the moon? The moon is a small little 9-inch thing that sits in a jar of water. And it gets ripply. And it's got bugs on it. So also, I think I am Jim. And I'm little. And I'm caught in my body. And I'm sad. I'm happy. I'm successful. I'm a failure. I'm a good person. I'm so terrible. And it only seems true because I do not look and see. Koham, who am I? So when I see the 6 moons in the jars, one is ripply, one has bugs on it, I'm attributing to the moon the qualities of the water. But in fact, the moon in the sky is not touched. This is what Shankara invites us to see. This chaya, this reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought, is not an entity. It's a shadow self. It's a reflected self. It is pratibimba. Bimba means a mirror. Pratibimba means the reflection in the mirror. That's all it is. Next verse.
Maya hastina maruha Maya piko yatha vrajet agacham stadvat devatma pranaswapnadigo chalaha. Just as a magician comes and goes on an elephant created by his own magic, so the self, though devoid of all motion, appears to be undergoing conditions such as the undifferentiated dream, etc.
So here, magician, did he say Mayavi? What word did he use? Indravi?
Yeah, Maya Hastina. I think so, Maya. Yeah.
Maya Hastina or something like that. Anyway, so a better translation, I would say, is illusionist. So the illusionist is able to make people think that he climbs up a rope and disappears, or hear that he's on top of an elephant. It's a form of hypnotism. Seen, not really there. Just like in a stage show of someone's hypnotized into thinking they're a rabbit or a chicken. Seems so real, but it's not. So also, Maya has the power to delude minds and makes us think we are the equipment when we are not. It seems like myself undergoes a change. It seems like I'm a person. I got issues. It's not true. Never was true. So to sum this up, both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. What is my bondage? My bondage is I think I'm my body plus the personality. And as long as I'm in that state, physical bodies will come and go. The subtle body, which has the repository of vasana in it, will continue. What is liberation? There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction that I am Brahman, not that I'm a fantastic person. What does this liberation do? It removes the cause of reincarnation. What makes the subtle body incarnate? The desire for more experience, the desire to be a person. Why am I afraid of death? I'm afraid of death because of the desire to be a person. Why do I want stuff? Because I think stuff's going to make me happy. All that is rooted in spiritual ignorance. So, going back to Gita, chapter 2, verse 55. when a person casts off all the desires of the mind, O Varta, and is satisfied in the self by the self, then they are said to be a person of steady wisdom. None other. Okay, we'll end here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha.